Hey, hello. I'm talking to you. I said hello. Let me do y'all like Marsha Fudge did the White House press corps. I said good morning. Let me go full auntie on everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Burn It Down with Kim Brown, everybody. Of course, you know I'm so happy to see your smiling faces up in the place. This is where the safe space with the Roots on my right and Ghostface Killer on my left. This is the safe space where we set oppression ablaze. And of course, we are here to talk about all things that affect you, working people, that affect you, marginalized and oppressed people. But we're here to do it from a very regular people perspective. So I'm so glad that you all are here. Thank you so much for watching us. If you are doing so via Twitter, please don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Burn It Down KB. And we are on Facebook as well. So be sure to do that. But guys, real quick, show of hands. Raise your hand if you have student loan debts. Raise it. You see my hand is raised. Now, I done graduated college about 200 years ago, and I still owe money on my undergraduate degree. It is fucking unbelievable. But we know that a lot of pressure is being applied to the Biden administration to cancel student loan debt. Now, Biden is not amenable to this. It does not seem. There was speculation that the administration could be persuaded to forgive as much as $10,000 of student loan debt. But really, y'all, in the scheme of things, what does that really do? Not a whole lot. Especially if you pursued your higher education beyond the bachelor degree. I should probably go back to school. But if you went further than undergrad, then yeah, you owe a lot of money. And $10,000 is not really going to do much for your bottom line. And we all know, at least I do, if you do not have federal student loans to pay monthly, despite the moratorium about the pandemic, let's talk about as if we are in non-pandemic times, that money can really add up. And it can really be a game changer in your sort of quality of life. If you didn't have to pay $400 a month for a piece of paper, right? I mean, your education has value, but when you graduate college, it is a piece of paper, right? So you're paying $400 a month for this piece of paper, and you are not starting a family. You are not buying a house. You are not stimulating the economy in other ways. But if that money was forgiven, we could be stimulating the hell out of the economy. Now, Joe Biden is aware of all this. And as evidenced in this somewhat recent CNN town hall, this was several weeks ago, Joe Biden let us know that he does not give a shit. Tunde, if we could please check out this very famous clip of Joe Biden just clearly not caring. Let's check that out, Tunde.
Loans are crushing my family, friends, and fellow Americans.
Me too.
The American dream is to succeed, but how can we fulfill that dream when debt is many people's only option for a degree? We need student loan forgiveness beyond the potential $10,000 your administration has proposed. We need at least a $50,000 minimum. What will you do to make that happen?
I will not make that happen. It depends on whether or not you go to a private university or public university. It depends on the idea that I say to a community, I'm going to forgive the debt, the billions of dollars of debt for people who have gone to Harvard and Yale and Penn and schools. My children, I went to a great school, I went to a state school. But is that going to be forgiven rather than use that money to provide for early education for young children who come from disadvantaged circumstances? But here's what I think. I think everyone, and I've been proposing this for 4 years, everyone should be able to go to community college for free. For free. That's cost $9 billion, and we should pay for it. And the tax policies we have now, we should be able to pay for it. You spend almost that money as a break for people who own racehorses. And I think any family making under $125,000 whose kids go to a state university they get into, that should be free as well.
Should be free as well. Community college should be free. That sounds like a great idea. Thanks, Bernie Sanders. Thanks, Green Party. Oh, I'm sorry. Joe Biden's out here taking credit for other people's policy suggestions. You don't say. Well, I want us to pop up this tweet, if we could, Tunde, from the Debt Collective. The Debt Collective has been tracking and trying to put a lot of pressure on the Biden administration to forgive student loan within the first 100 days. I think we are past that threshold, but at the same time, the pressure still is still being applied, and it is very much needed. And the Debt Collective tweeted, to be clear, Joe Biden has the legal authority to cancel 100% of student loan debt held by the federal government through powers called compromise and settlement. Congress vested this authority in the Department of Education through the Higher Education Act of 1965. So this is a thing that Biden could do. He just don't want to do it. Well, there has been some movement on the student loan issue, including a new Senate resolution set forth by Chuck Schumer, backed up by Senator Elizabeth Warren, really putting the press on Joe Biden to cancel $50,000 worth of student debt. And the Biden administration's Department of Education apparently has canceled some student loan debt for some disabled Americans. So we're going to get some more details about that. And joining us today to discuss this, thankfully, because we need some clarification on all this, Braxton Brewington. Braxton, the reason I wanted to ask if I could ask you, because that sounds like a very Caribbean name. That is very English derived. Braxton Brewington. That's why I wanted to ask you if you were Caribbean before we started. But if you're not, that's okay. Braxton Brewington is the press secretary for the Debt Collective and a recent HBCU graduate, fighting for student debt cancellation and making college free for all. And Braxton, we are so appreciative of your time and your expertise today to update us all on this issue that affects so many out here. So thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I wish I weren't here because I wish student debt were canceled, but we're here now. We're waiting on Biden to cancel student debt. So a couple of things he said in that video that real quick, was just like driving me a little bit crazy over here. He conflated so many different things in that town hall. And he has a tendency to sort of dig his heels in when he's confronted with these issues. But I think one of the main myths that he peddled was that student debt is largely held by these Ivy League graduates, right? People who went to Harvard and Penn, like he said, like his children, who are now magically doctors and lawyers and make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and are sitting on thousands of dollars worth of debt and are just choosing not to pay it, right? So he's sort of peddling this myth that's just really not true. We know that student loans, about 3% of student loans are held by people who went to Ivy Leagues. So the majority of people who
We froze. Braxton,
So-
are you with us? Okay, you're back. Sorry, Braxton. Continue your point because you froze for about 5 seconds-ish.
Oh, sorry. So I was saying Black women, low-income borrowers, Black and brown borrowers in particular, hold a majority of student loan debt. So, this myth that, these are just these white, wealthy Ivy League graduates who hold the student debt just simply isn't true. And, to sort of say, well, we can just pay for community college because it costs only $9 billion is just totally missing the mark. And so we should have free community college and we should have free college overall. And so he sort of conflates the idea that, we can have community college because it costs a small amount. Well, what he's missing is that it costs more to keep student loans on the books of the federal government than it does to simply cancel all of that debt. So there was a lot that he did. We'd be here for a very long time to try to debunk everything that he said in that video. But I just had to start with that he conflated a lot of things and peddled a lot of myths.
Absolutely. And I know that, those points that you raised were raised by others as well. It's like, well, if you're talking about all these Ivy League graduates, more likely than not, their parents paid for them out of pocket to go to school. Maybe not the whole way, but enough that they weren't be saddled with this lifetime debt. And Tunde, if you could please, can we look at A2? A piece that I found recently on the Inside Higher Education website talks about how Black borrowers are more likely to never be able to repay student debt. And Braxton, I appreciate you making the point that Black women are tremendous holders of college debt. Oftentimes, had a household, just really doing the most financially in trying to further our situation. And one piece of this study that was conducted by the J.P. Morgan Chase Institute. You take of that what you will. It says that about 13% of Black borrowers are projected to never be able to pay their debt because they are not keeping up their payments and their balances are increasing. But the other issue is that the study found is that the median annual salary paid by Black borrowers was $212 less than the $1,850 that they were scheduled to pay. And they said one likely cause, the study noted, is that the median income of Black student loan borrowers is approximately $12,500 lower, or 22% less than the income of the white student loan borrower. Braxton, the cancellation of student loan debt is absolutely an economic justice issue and is a racial justice issue. So double down. Tell me why. Like, how much more would the economic situation of Black and brown households improve if the Biden administration were to cancel all student loan debt?
Absolutely. So yes, economic justice issue, racial justice issue, gender justice issue, a combination of all of those things that really can't be separated. So yes, those statistics are true. I was reading another stat that's floated around that says about after 20 years of repayment of a loan after a person graduates, the average white borrower, after 20 years, the average white borrower has paid off about 95% of that loan, as opposed to the average Black borrower, which still owes about 95% of that loan. So Black borrowers, for two large reasons, right? One, we often lack, well, I shouldn't say we lack, we have been stripped of generational wealth for decades. So we, it's more difficult to pay for college upfront as opposed to white borrowers. Then once we are able to take out those loans, it takes longer to pay off those loans because we lack the wealth. And like you cited, because our income is less. And that's even more dramatic for Black women and other women of color. So, this is a racial and gender justice issue. And so really one of the cases that we're making for canceling student loan debt is not just that it will boost the economy, not that it's just right and good because education should not be a commodity, but it will dramatically narrow the racial wealth gap. Some estimates are very dramatic, saying that this would nearly cut the racial wealth gap in half because so many Black borrowers are saddled with student loan debt. So, I would turn the tables around on President Biden to say, every day that he refuses to cancel student loan debt, he has this tool that's widely available to him, and him not using executive action to cancel student loan debt is just allowing those racial disparities to persist. And so we talk a lot about, how to close these racial gaps, in all of the different sectors of the economy. One of the best ways he could help narrow that gap is through canceling student loan debt.
So the pressure is beginning to be applied on Joe Biden. I mean, even before he was inaugurated as president, pardon me, a lot of activists and organizations were like, listen, we got to keep pushing Biden to the left on day one. And the issue of the student loan forgiveness is a big one that people are rallying behind. And it appears as though, at least in the Senate, Senator Chuck Schumer from New York and Senator Liz Warren of Massachusetts have introduced, tune Dave, you could pop A4 up for me, please. They have introduced Senate Resolution 46. Now, this is a resolution calling on the President of the United States to take executive action to broadly cancel federal student loan debt. And this is a really interesting move, I think, by Schumer and Warren here, Braxton, because, Biden, in that first clip that we played, was definitely trying to punt to Congress, saying that it is on Congress to draft legislation in order to get the student loan debt forgiven. But here we are, his Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, is saying, no, Joe, we think you could do this all on your own. Let's take a listen from this clip from Senator Schumer that he made with Liz Warren that was released today. We're going to hear from Liz Warren in a second, but today, if we could please start with A5.
I hear from folks who say, but I don't have student loan debt. Why should I care about this?
A5.
And the answer is you should care because for
A5. Let's get the Schumer clip. We're going to come back to Liz Warren. I'm sorry? Okay. So do we have it? Oh, okay. 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 All right, y'all, stand by. So what we are going to hear, let's go ahead and hear from Liz Warren, because Liz Warren is reflecting, what she's doing is she's answering a perspective that we have heard from a lot of people, a lot of haters, I think, people who say that, hey, I have paid off my student loans, or, you know, I never even took student loans. So why should, you know, my tax paying dollars go to pay off another person's debt if they made bad decisions about their funding of their education, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what Liz Warren had to say to that argument. A6, please, Tunde.
I hear from folks who say, but I don't have student loan debt. Why should I care about this? And the answer is you should care, because for every young person who's not starting a business, for every young person who's not buying a home, that's holding back the economy, and that affects every single one of us. So if you've got student loan debt, you love this plan. President Biden can cancel $50,000 worth of student loan debt. But if you don't have student loan debt, you'll love this plan, because this is about lifting up everyone, about closing racial wealth gaps, and about creating more opportunity for the entire economy.
Braxton, let me get your reaction to what Senator Warren had to say there.
Yeah, so a lot of what she said is true. The benefits of canceling student loan debt will affect everyone, whether you have student loans or not. When the economy does better, that's better for everyone. So we know that canceling student loan debt is projected to create 1.2 to 1.5 million jobs per year for the next 10 years. So we're talking about creating jobs. We're talking about the market just increasing and being better for everyone. One thing that the problem that we have with this resolution that Chuck Schumer and Senator Warren and others have introduced and been championing pretty well is that the cap of suggesting that President Biden should cancel up to 50K is sort of where we have a disagreement with. We are pushing for full student debt cancellation. I think where they're getting those numbers from, 50,000, is sort of a conservative estimate that some economists did years ago, which those economists now say those numbers should be closer to 75K. So even they're a little bit behind, the economists that sort of suggested those numbers. But what we have is, suggesting we should cancel student loan debt up to a certain amount misses a few points. One, canceling student debt is an economic stimulus to the economy. So when we limit how much debt we're canceling, we are limiting how much of the economy we can stimulate. So that's why we need full cancellation. Also, because so many people that I've met and that are with the debt collective and a part of the debtors union have way more than $50,000 worth of debt, either from undergrad, graduate school, a combination of these different sorts of things. And also because interest rates are way too high, constantly ballooning. And so, there's been multiple stories that have been, written in the New York Times and other, the Washington Post, of people who say, I had $75,000 worth of loans. I had $100,000 worth of loans, and I was paying for 10 years, 15 years. And all of a sudden I owe more than I did when I first started. And so, this is just another means test. This is just another way of, trying to handle the problem without fully addressing the problem, rather than saying we should cancel all student loan debt, which we know a large chunk of that debt is not expected to be paid back. So we're just saddling millions of people still with student loan debt. So rather than just saying, we should cancel all student loan debt and we should make college free like it used to be only decades ago, so that people don't have to have this problem again. So Warren and Schumer, great that they introduced this and, are putting some pressure on Biden, but their numbers are off. We should be pushing for full student debt cancellation for so many reasons. And, they've got the reasons there, but their numbers are a bit off. They're way too conservative. And it's only a step above saying we should have income-driven repayment plans, and we should have public service loan forgiveness, which we know those things don't really work. Only like 32 people have had their debts forgiven from public service loan forgiveness. Why have an income-driven repayment plan that cancels your debt after 20 years. Why don't we just cancel it now? So,
Wait,
they're almost there.
Braxton, let me follow up on something that you just said. You said that the public service forgiveness, you said only 32 people have had their loans forgiven as a result of, is that when you go either volunteer to teach or, some sort of, public service through your government, where they forgive a portion of your loan? Did you say only 32 people have had that actually, benefit them?
You can count them on your hand. Yes. So this program, which was created under the Bush administration and is really the Democrats and Republicans working to create some type of forgiveness program, right? That is means tested, that is sort of along the lines of you have to do X thing in order to qualify for debt cancellation, who we deem worthy and unworthy of being saddled with student debt or not being saddled with student debt. So you have to be in this program for a certain amount of time in order to get this cancellation. Certain things have to qualify in terms of, yes, your occupation, the amount of student debt that you have, how long you're paying on them, if you can't miss certain payments. So it's sort of tight in terms of the qualifications. Many people have gone through this program and people have been denied. They've gone through the 10 years of payment and then thought that they were going to get their debt canceled, and turned out 5 years ago they didn't turn in some type of paperwork, or there was something and they actually don't qualify. So it's really a scam. It's really tricked a lot of people, and a lot of people have gone into professions that maybe wasn't their first choice in terms of a profession in order to not be saddled with the student debt. And it actually isn't working out. So a report came out a couple of weeks ago that said only 32 people have had their student debt canceled through public service loan forgiveness, which I'm sure we all understand to be a completely unsustainable number.
Yes, that sounds like utter hogwash and a scam. Exactly like you said. Our own Molly Shaw, Molly is our social media coordinator. She just slacked me. She said, I knew that was bullshit. When they set that up in 2004, there were so many ways not to pay people. And that kind of leads me to my next question here, Braxton, because this is what is so infuriating about this entire situation about student loan. I remember being a young college graduate and thinking, like, how am I supposed to pay rent, feed myself, and pay this fucking loan every month and still be able to afford gas, insurance, basic everyday living expenses, when the student loan is eating up such a significant portion of my already meager salary? It just didn't seem sustainable, and it's not sustainable, but it can really make you it's a very isolating feeling when you're not able to pay your student loans. At least it was when I was coming out of college. And the time that I defaulted on my student loans and the federal government snatched my tax refund, oh, my feelings. I was so deep in my feelings because I didn't even know that they could do that. But they did that. And I know a lot of people have absolutely experienced that. But so, Braxton, what is behind the curtain here? Why is it that Democrat Joe Biden, along with a lot of Republicans in the Senate, are very much against canceling student loan debt? We know that student loan is a multi-billion trillion dollar industry. And there's a lot of money at stake here. So who are the players that are actually benefiting from people who are still continuing to pay off these enormous sums for their higher education and who may even default on their loans? Like, who is benefiting from all of us being $1 trillion in student loan debt?
Yeah. First, I want to say we have a saying at the Debt Collective where we say, you are not alone. And you are not alone, right? LOAN and ALONE. So I hope I spelled that right. So correct. We know that we are all saddled with the student debt and we are burdened. And that is the way that it's designed. These financial webs that sort of individualize us as opposed to allowing us to see our collective power. And I wanted to just say one more thing. You talked about garnishment. That a lot of folks don't know is that you can have your Social Security checks, up to 15% of your Social Security check garnished by student loan if you have student loan debt. So I don't know why that is legal. Other types of debt, like credit card debt, other types of debt, cannot be garnished from Social Security checks, which we understand to be one of the greatest, anti-poverty programs, for people who are over the age of 65. I just want to throw that out there because that is still ridiculous. But the people who are benefiting from this are indeed, or were people like President Joe Biden back when he was a senator, who comes from Delaware, what we know, Wilmington, Delaware, what we know as the state of Delaware as kind of the credit card capital of the world. These credit card companies and the entire industry of debt collectors benefit so much from people who are struggling to pay off their student loans, and the interest raises, and they're able to buy and sell the debt on these really cheap markets, and are trying to relinquish, trying to scrap together pennies from people who really can't afford it in a really harmful and violent way. And we know that has led to people taking various decisions that they shouldn't have to have, like, should I go to, this is something we say at the Debt Collective all the time, people shouldn't have to choose, should I pay off my student loan debt, or should I pay for groceries on my credit card, or should I pay for chemotherapy? These are just insurmountable questions that people have to ask now because of student loans. And the people who are benefiting are these giant credit card companies. And it's really the sort of ironic thing is that the federal government really isn't benefiting as much as we would think it is. So, the student loan payments that we are paying back is not necessarily this incredibly large income that the government can use, which is sort of, the irony in being hesitant towards canceling student loans, because it's not like the government is necessarily using this revenue, right, to pay off other types of bills. So there's a lot of things at play here. Republican and Democratic senators who, are in bed with these companies who want to keep people down. And we know that debt is a means of social control, right? It's another way to keep people down. It's another way to use racial capitalism to separate who we deem worthy of living a just life and who we deem unworthy of living a just life. And right now, that is, not to mention education is not a commodity, right? So we're already commodifying something that should be a public good and used to be a public good. And so anyone who has student loan debt, we say there's an argument that, canceling student loan debt is going to be regressive, right? Because it's going to benefit these wealthy people that Joe Biden was talking about earlier. Well, actually, what we say is student debt itself is regressive, right? So if you are not able to pay for college up front, that was your means test. You were tested and you did not have the means to pay for college up front. And so these are the people that, do not have the generational wealth, cannot afford the skyrocketing tuition and fees and room and board and all of these ridiculous fines and fees that universities charge, not to mention high interest rates. So it is actually progressive to cancel all student loan debt because by nature, you are freeing up money for people who clearly need it the most because they weren't wealthy enough to afford to pay for college up front. And just in case there are 7 rich people that have student loan debt, and we don't want them to get extra cash, all we have to do is tax the wealthy, and then we will not have to worry about that problem at all.
Come on. Let's make it simple. It's so easy. The solution to these problems is so simple, and they want to make things so hard, Braxton. I can't stand it. One thing I wanted to touch base with you about is this recent news from the Biden administration's Department of Education that they have, in fact, canceled over $1 billion in student loans for qualifying disabled Americans. Now, Democrats have a very long track record, and they are extremely good of dressing up headlines and news stories as if, look, guys, look, we did this really good thing for this marginalized group. But when you put your reading glasses on and examine the fine print, it's not as high quality of a policy as it was being sold to us. So can you talk to us about what you know about this new policy decision by the Biden administration to cancel this student loan debt for tens of thousands of disabled folks? What is the fine print on this, Braxton?
Sure. I think things can be wins and losses at the same time. Wonderful that any individual had their debt canceled. They do not deserve to carry around debt at all, especially for education. And similar, and I'll add on to this, we know a couple of weeks ago that $1 billion worth of student debt was canceled for people who were defrauded, who went to these predatory for-profit colleges and got partial cancellation because of Betsy DeVos and how terrible she is. The Biden administration then stepped in and said, we're going to complete that full discharge. So we know that $1 billion was just canceled for 72,000 borrowers for people who were scammed, who were defrauded. And that's been celebrated very much as a win, right? And we had our own celebration here at the Debt Collective. But what we know is that this picking and choosing of who is worthy and who is unworthy is the same thing as these programs that we talked about earlier of, if you go into a certain profession, then we will deem that worthy of cancellation after X amount of years. If you, qualify for, this sort of income, then we say that's okay. You don't have to pay this amount of debt. But if you have a little bit more, then we say, no, you need to continue to pay that debt. And that's just completely wrong. We should be canceling all student debt. We're fighting for full cancellation. And so I think this is both a win, but also sort of a tool of distraction to sort of say that, like, listen, like we are sort of doing things, but we know that there's 45, probably more million borrowers who have student loan debt and they cannot afford it. And the moratorium has proven that. That's why we've had an extension until September. And we know that I think millions of people now know, wait a minute, we have not been paying student loans since March of 2020. If the moratorium applies to you, it doesn't apply to everyone, which is unfortunate. But if it applies to you, we haven't been paying student loans since March of 2020. I don't have to pay them again until at least September of 2021 of this year. Even if, and the moratorium could be extended. So we know that millions of people, and we see it online and even we hear it, sort of on the street of people saying, well, it seems like the government doesn't actually need my payments in order to function. Seems like they're sort of bringing this money out of nowhere, or these student loan payments clearly aren't that much of a necessity. And that's just absolutely the truth. So happy for these borrowers who had their student loans canceled, but we need full cancellation. And we've been saying anything less than full cancellation is a policy failure. When millions of people know that you have a tool that just with the flick of a pen, just a signature, you can wipe out student loans, and to not do it is dangerous for so many reasons. We talked about the racial and gender and economic aspect, but also I'll say this last quick point. It really starts to set us up for the economic conditions that brought us fascism and Donald Trump. So, the conditions before Donald Trump, right? People who, I hear Vice President Harris used to say this all the time on the campaign trail. People who can't afford, we all know the people who can't afford a $400, car bill, or if should something happen to their car, right? Those are the sort of economic conditions that brought us fascism, this new wave of fascism, Trumpism, of people saying, you know what, I'm going to try something else. And I think Joe Biden risks setting those economic conditions up by not canceling student debt when millions of people say, wait a minute, why wouldn't he do this? There's a study that said 1 in 5 Trump supporters would consider supporting Joe Biden if he were to cancel student debt. We know 40% of Black voters said they would consider sitting out the next election if Joe Biden doesn't cancel student debt. So there's a broad coalition of people that would come together and support this policy. So Joe Biden not doing it, not canceling student debt, really is a policy failure.
hold the phone. Does Joe Biden know that 1 in 5 Trump supporters would support him if he went ahead and canceled student loan debt? Because it seems to me he would trip and fall all over himself to get to that 1 in 5 Trump voter that the Democrats seem to covet oh so badly. They want these so-called moderates or these former Obama then Trump voters then back to Joe Biden voters. It's very strange the way the Democrats really court these quote unquote white working class folks. But Braxton, well, first, we did have this clip from Chuck Schumer, and on the Debt Collective's Twitter page, you guys actually retweeted Chuck Schumer's clip with information about how to reach the White House, because Senator Schumer is in fact challenging people to tell Joe Biden straight up that he needs to do this $50,000 student loan forgiveness. So, Tunde, if we could take a look at Chuck Schumer, please.
So people, folks listening, whether you have the debt, have a friend who has the debt, believe it's the right thing, we're asking you, email, call, write President Joseph Robinette Biden and tell him you want this done. We're trying to get as many people to contact the White House as possible. And frankly, we told this to Joe Biden and he said, go ahead, let it rip. So let's show him what kind of support there is out there for this great plan that Elizabeth, Bob, and I and many, many others are pushing. Let's get this done.
Chuck Schumer, Liz Warren there advocating for people to call and express their support to Joe Biden for their new Senate resolution that authorizes the president, even though he can do it all by himself, to cancel $50,000 of student loans. Braxton, I want to talk about resistance and the way to resist this oppressive system of financing your education. And I just think about the many generations that have been impacted by this. I mean, there are people who are elderly, who are still paying off their student loans, who have in fact co-signed student loans for their children who are middle-aged like me. And then you have middle-aged people like me who have young kids like teenagers who are prepping to be college age, who now you have to figure out how to finance their education while still paying off your own education, while your mother / grandmother is still paying off her education. I mean, it is such a generational sort of clusterfuck here that so many people are experiencing. But an act of resistance is to not pay your student loans, and there are consequences for that. But it is a act of defiance that many are doing either voluntarily or involuntarily. So talk to me about what it means not to pay your student loans, either because you're not financially able to, or because you were like, fuck this shit. This is some bullshit. Like, this is killing me every month. I cannot do this. Therefore, I am not going to do this any longer.
Yeah. So absolutely. First of all, I strongly encourage everyone to call, email, send a letter to Joseph Robinette Biden Jr.
Get Mr. Robinette, get him, call him. I'm sorry,
exactly. Go ahead. And tell him to cancel student loan debt. But we've said many times, our theory of change at the Debt Collective is not that Joe Biden is some magical, progressive, leftist, anti-racist, anti-capitalist hero that he will then cancel student debt and champion it and go around the country and say, this will put money in your pocket, right? That would be grand. And maybe that can still happen. But down to reality, that likely will not happen. We know President Biden's history on a host of issues. And so that's going to take some organizing and some resistance from people like me, probably from all the people who are watching this. And so one thing that we can do is organize ourselves. So right now we have a week of action. We are in cities across the country, San Diego, Chicago, New York, DC, Albuquerque, all these cities across the country right now doing banner drops, going to members of Congress's office. We're sending letters, we're writing petitions, demanding student loan cancellation. But also we have people who are striking. So right now, the campaign is still going on. I think we have a month left until Joe Biden's, artificial 100 days. But right now we have what's called the Biden Jubilee 100. So this is 100 individuals who on the first day, January 20th, on the first day of Joe Biden's administration said, I refuse to pay back my student loans until President Biden cancels that debt. And so what that is a strike. That is a debt strike. That in a similar way that workers go on strike to demand better working conditions or better pay, we are going on strike to say we demand a cancellation in this moment. This Biden Jubilee 100, this debt strike, is based off of a successful debt strike only a few years ago called the Corinthian 15. Those are 15, started off as 15 individuals, but then grew, who were scammed by Corinthian College, who said, you know what, we're not going to pay back our student loans. Long story short, because it is a long story. And just a couple of weeks ago, what we talked about, those borrowers, a lot of those borrowers got their debt canceled. And so that is sort of the power of a debtors union that says, you know what, I have $700 a month payments. You have $400 monthly payments. You have $1,000 monthly payments. If we come together and withhold our payments, we can politicize that leverage. And so that's what the Biden Jubilee 100 is doing. Those are just sort of a symbolic 100, but we know that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who are not paying back their student loans. And so the definition that the Corinthian 15 came up, this original group of strikers, the definition that they came up with of being on strike with your student debt is to be paying $0 a month. So there are safe and unsafe ways to do that. You could just simply not pay and then you wouldn't be paying. But there are safe ways to get to $0 monthly payments, which is, you know, an income-driven repayment program that gets you to $0 a month, or administrative forbearance. You know, we're kind of getting into the weeds, but there's different ways to get to $0 a month. So we're saying right now there's a moratorium. So if you have not been paying, then, you know, technically you are on strike. I'm on strike. I haven't paid since this anything since this moratorium started. So I would be a debt striker. And what we're saying is, you know, we can leverage the debt that we owe, or that we were told we owe, is really an asset to the 1%, right? Like we talked about earlier, there are people that are profiting off of our debt. And so what we can say is our payments are someone else's paychecks, and we can withhold their paycheck by withholding our payments. And so that's what we're doing. We're building a debtors union, similar, like, again, to a workplace union, where we're bringing people together to say, collectively, we are going to make demands, whether it's cancel student debt, or if we wanted to, you know, have a medical debtors union and demand a cancellation of medical debt, paired with Medicare for all, right, or some single payer universal healthcare system. We could do the same thing with housing, with credit card debt, with criminal punishment debt. So that's sort of the larger, you know, theme that we're working with at the Debt Collective. But what we are saying right now with student debt is we can withhold our payments as an act of economic resistance, right, which is this a civil disobedience in a way that often is sometimes even more powerful, because again, when you have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of payments that are going to the 1%, that are going to these wealthy banks, that are going to the federal government, and they're being withheld, you can start to make demands. So that's what our strike is. That's what our debtors union is, and that's why it's so powerful, and that's why we've won cancellation to date. We've won billions of dollars worth of cancellation because, you know, we've been fighting for it.
Braxton, before I let you go, I want you to talk to us about how this issue of being saddled with student loan debt is affecting your generation specifically. You say you're a recent HBCU grad, so I'm going to assume you're a very young millennial or old Gen Zer. I've been out of college for 20 years, and that also sounds extremely strange to say that aloud. But I still have student loans, and it's some bullshit. And I only did undergrad. And so I can imagine for people who went further than undergrad, the types of monthly repayment bills that they are looking at. But there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of analysis been done on millennials / old Gen Zers about how this is affecting y'all specifically. So if you would like to share either your personal experience or the experience of your peers and your colleagues about how you all have discussed about how this is impacting your life, like how this is impacting your young adulthood and the goals that you have and the shit that you want to do. Like when you're dealing with thousands of dollars hanging over your head, and most of the starting salaries for recent college graduates is not high. So you're not making a lot of money to begin with. I can totally relate to that. I've been there. But talk to me about what this looks like for young people like yourself who are just getting out into the world and looking at this bill like, ain't this some shit? Talk to me about that, please.
Yeah, part of the thing, I should have said this earlier, but what we try to do is part of what makes it so hard to organize around debt is that we never know how much debt people have. We're so silent about it. We're so ashamed of our debt. And so part of what we're doing is really encouraging folks to be open and share how much debt you have or how much debt you are told that you owe for education, I should say. So me personally, I took out, I think, about close to $50,000 worth of loans in order to go to undergrad. 35 of which I don't know. I haven't looked at my account in years, so I don't even know. But about 35 of which is in my name, and the rest, which is in my parents' name, which they were, I should say, fortunate enough to even be able to take out in their own name when I first started college. And that's with me paying while I was in college, working 2, sometimes 3 jobs during college to sort of bring that price down to not have as many loans when I got out, right? So I have tens of thousands of dollars worth of loans, let's say 35, which is the average number, which is incredibly high and feels also weird to say now that I've met so many people who have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of loans, right? But still a gross amount, not to mention when you add on racial disparities and gender disparities, being paid less in the workplace, not having the intergenerational wealth, it's really tough. And, my personal experience, I think, is similar of my friends, where there's not even a conversation about buying a home. There's not even, this idea of starting a family or having kids seems frankly irresponsible, not to mention adding on the climate crisis. And so I think, and that is just, I've spoken to other millennials who have not gotten married because they don't want their partner to also have to carry on that burden of being tied to student loan debt. I think the average person dies $60,000 in debt. So people are carrying this debt with them. And not only is it a financial burden, I think we all know that at this point, it's a crisis. It's been called a crisis for a decade. But what people are walking around with, I think, is incredibly sad. This sort of guilt, this shame. People who have reached out and said that they have considering even taking their own lives because the debt is that burdening. It's really a crisis, and it's very immoral. And so I think not only am I, struggling with the idea of, are we supposed to start making payments in October? Like, that's not something that I want to do or think I can afford to do or plan on doing. But, we have to make these decisions like, well, maybe can I live in my parents' home, and maybe I can cut back on these sorts of things. But it really just doesn't work that way. It's way too much money. It balloons the interest, not to mention if you have a private student loan, which can be, 8, 9, 10%, even higher, rates of student loan payments where you're just paying on your interest and not even the principal. So, this crisis is bringing down an entire generation of people. It's a multi-generational issue, like we talked about with seniors and folks who are, around the age of my parents, but particularly folks like me. I graduated in 2018, owing tens of thousands of dollars worth of debt. It really limits, your mental capacity of what you even think you're capable of doing, right? And it disallows people to go in professions that they like. They're not able to buy homes, which would boost the economy. There's just so many adverse effects that really is not worth the 1.7, maybe now $1.8 trillion worth of student debt that people are saddled with. So, if anything, you would think that this could maybe appeal to people's morals. Joe Biden, right? Don't we hail? Joe Biden as, a moral good man, we would imagine that he should see this. we should see this. That's
sorry,
what they say. No, but he should see this as a moral issue, right? And that is why it's called the Biden Jubilee 100, right? If we want to get religious on this, that we know that there was a jubilee, which every 7 years the debts of people were forgiven. So we're saying we need our jubilee. We need a national jubilee that extends for regular people like you and I to have our debts forgiven so that we can live an actual life. And I shouldn't say forgiven because we don't say forgiveness because we're not sorry about anything. We say cancellation, we say abolition. So we're asking and we are demanding for debt abolition.
All right, Braxton, one more question. Last question. I promise I'm gonna let you go after this. And I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna ask this question really on behalf of everyone that's ever attended college or at any level. And at the end of it, and you're looking at this ginormous bill and you're like, my prevailing thought is and was, is college a scam? Is it the scammiest of scams? Is just undergrad a scam, or is the whole institution of college and having to pay for higher education? Is it a scam? Is it a scam, Braxton? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts. So we know that college used to be free, and some would argue maybe it used to be freeing, right? This is when it was for white people who could go to college. There was a time when tuitions were very, very, very low fee. Student debt was untraceable. There basically was no student debt. That was a time that we sort of put on a pedestal as a great time in this country because, there was a public good that was free. Now it is not. So I can only see it in that context. I think to say, was college a scam, I think is a loaded thing. I definitely will say the tuition, the fines and the fees is a scam. I think it's just interesting I've recently been able to decouple my experience with learning, something I was passionate about. I went to school for political science and journalism, right? If that were free, and if that was a freeing experience, I wouldn't call it a scam because that's something that I wanted to do. And some people don't want to go to college, and that is also fine. And I think what we need to do is return education back to a public good, back to an institution that benefits the community that it's around. I think there's, not to mention pay for administration, for workers of universities, to remove police off of campus, right? There's so many things that are intertwined with the university as an institution that need to be changed. And I think then we can have not only college as a public good, but as a freeing experience, as an experience that benefits, because we do need education. We do need higher education, which vastly benefits our society. But once it becomes racialized, once it becomes, this large wealth status and, capitalism starts to corrupt all of these different things, then it does become a scam. And then we do have people that are scammed. So I'll say that, take that as you will. It's just tough to say, I think it's tough for people to say I was scammed. But I think the better way to put it is like the government failed in terms of policy, right? Like the government didn't do what they should be doing, which is to keep higher education as a public good.
Absolutely. That was a great answer. And I agree. I don't think learning is the scam. I think when you couple, what the education that you're receiving at a university along with, the actual bill that comes at the end of every semester or really at the beginning of every semester. I do feel a little scam. Like I'm appreciative that I was able to go to college, and I'm appreciative that my mother was very generous with her credit and allowing me to, she co-signed on some loans for me. And that also still has me feeling very guilty because, she's not able to do certain things because I still owe money on my college. So in that sense, when I'm looking at how long it's been since I was in a college classroom and the shit that I'm still dealing with as a result of the student loans, that's where I do feel scammed. But I agree. I think learning is not a scam. but the business of college is a scam. But that was a brilliant answer there.
The business of college is definitely a scam. It is definitely a scam. And one of the main persons that created that scam was Joe Biden. He played an incredibly large role in making it way more difficult for people to be able to pay back their student loans in terms of increasing tuition. So if anybody feels like they were scammed, it's largely because of Joe Biden, which is all the more reason of why it might be kind of sweet justice for him to be the one to cancel student debt and start to right some of his wrongs that he made decades ago.
Thank you. We see Joe Biden tripping up them steps. Joe Biden is only a few wrong missteps from the afterlife. So really, Joe Biden need to get his soul right and go ahead and sign that executive order that forgives and cancels, as you said, forgives, because we ain't sorry, cancels all student loans. So hopefully he will do that, as you said, Braxton, because he is a large part of the reason that we are in the situation that we were in. But I'd like to thank you so much for coming on and just being such an erudite guest. You are brilliant and just able to explain everything to us in a very succinct and very clear way. We have been speaking with Braxton Brewington. Braxton is the press secretary with the Debt Collective, also a recent HBCU graduate fighting for student debt cancellation and making sure that college is free for all. Braxton, thank you so much. We would love to have you on again, as hopefully we get some positive movement on this issue in the very, very near future.
Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully next time we see each other, we won't have any student debt. We'll have a party.
Be debt-free. Woo! Yes. And we'll be vaccinated and have our stimulus checks in our pockets and everything. Because I still ain't got my stimulus and I feel some kind of way about it. But Braxton, thank you, dear. We appreciate you making some time for us. And thank you to all the wonderful work that you're doing over at the Debt Collective. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Hey guys, I wasn't keeping an eye on the chat, so I hope you all learned a lot from Braxton, because Braxton just came on here and dropped gems on y'all. Please go follow the Debt Collective over on Twitter. And I will take Chuck Schumer's advice, and I will be emailing/calling President Joseph Robinette Biden, y'all's boy. You know that's y'all's boy. Y'all keep acting like y'all ain't vote for Joe Biden. I see y'all. That's okay. That's okay. What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? I just clicked over to the chat. What's up, Cryptician? What's up, Peter Low Frequency? Butterscotch Sweets is in the building. Hello, Anna Hart. What's up, honey? Shopsy 100. Luke Kang is in here. Where Black Magic? Is Black Magic in here or not? Derek Fuller, what's going on with you, baby? Who was it? Somebody ran us $25 on Venmo. Steely Steve, was that you? It was a Steve. And I don't know all y'all's last names and government names, and that's okay. I don't need to know y'all government names. But thank you very much for dropping us that $25 on Venmo. We really appreciate it. Shout out to all the patrons as well. One other topic, you guys, I want to get into before we leave out of here today has to do with the Hood Communist blog, right? Remember the wonderful brother we had on here, Ajamu. Oh man, I forgot Ajamu's last name. Maybe Jean VM knows, but no, go to our episode about, the real Cold War is capitalism's war against us, where the brother from the Hood Communist blog, Mr. Ajamu, came on and dropped gems on us. Today, if you could please hold on, let me scroll down, scroll. Can I please see C1 from Dr. CBS? Y'all know Dr. CBS from the Last Dope Intellectual. Check out our podcast if you haven't already. So you guys, the Hood Communist blog Twitter page suspended out the blue for apparently no fucking reason. And it is extremely, extremely disturbing that this has happened to them, because they had 30,000 followers, greater than 30,000 followers on their Twitter page. Had, just amazing content. I'm so grateful to the information and the perspectives that the Hood Communist blog was sharing via Twitter. And for them to just go away now is some fucking bullshit. As you see, there is a campaign on Twitter right now, #FreeHoodCommunist. Okay? People Power can reverse the suspension of the only African revolutionary internationalist blog existing right now. Free Hood Communist on Twitter. Free hood communists. Tunde, can we get that next one? That's from Dr. CBS, by the way. Black left as fuck on Twitter. She's awesome. The next one, is it C2? It was in the C's. It was the blog actually from Hood Communist Blog. They put it on their website addressing this issue, because when you go to their Twitter page, the shit is gone. Yes, it says account suspended. And it's, again, they did not, at least according to them, receive any notification from Twitter as to why their account was being suspended. The All African People's Revolutionary Party got suspended also, except when I checked that earlier, it seemed to be the AAPRP's page had been reinstated. Jean-Vive, can you, well, actually, never mind, you want to check. I'll check. But this is a problem, y'all. I mean, when we have publications and social media accounts that are trying to lift up not only African people's perspective, but our voices, and giving us some political direction, along with analyzing all the fucked up systems that we find ourselves in, and Twitter just gonna take that shit down. It's not like they was nowhere near the level of Trump. They were not inciting violence. But we do know, when you are trying to empower Black people, that is dangerous to the corporate sphere, is it not? To the government sphere. Like, them niggas get nervous, right? So I wanted us to please take a moment and send some solidarity out to the Hood Communist Blog. If you're on Twitter, please tweet that hashtag Free Hood Communist, because it is not cool. And I really appreciate Hood Communist uplifting this platform. They have retweeted Burn It Down with Kim Brown tweets, our broadcasts. Like I said, Brother Jamu came on here and was a brilliant guest. I know y'all really appreciate it. Right. Alex E says inciting people power. That's why Twitter gave him the yank. But that's not cool. So it is very important that we all hop on Twitter. I will be doing that once we log off and after I get something to eat. And pushing that hashtag quite a bit. So please send some love, support, and solidarity to the Hood Communist Blog, to the All African People's Revolutionary Party, for speaking up for us, for speaking the truth. And for that, they have been silenced without notice and without cause. Scary shit. Just a programming note really quick. It is a little bit after 6. I'm about to sign off here. For all you clickbaity folks, I'm going to be filling in for Mondale tonight. I will be co-hosting or guesting, I guess, with Marcus. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Anna Hart, you have been specifically asking when was I going back on clickbaity, and voila, it is tonight. So please tune into clickbaity. They go on about 8:30. So we got a couple hours. I got time to roll up. Y'all think Marcus would be fine if I bring a split? Yeah, I might just smoke up on clickbaity. That might be how that goes down tonight. We just might be getting high. I don't even know what we're talking about, but please, socially Democrat. Yeah, we're gonna be rocking clickbaity tonight. It's gonna be fun. Woo! You guys are really excited about that. That's what's happening. Thank you all so much. So I'll see y'all at 8:30 for clickbaity. In the meantime, thank you very much again to Braxton Brewington from the Debt Collective for being an amazing guest and just sharing some incredible information with all of us, because I still got student loans and there's some bullshit. And all I got was a little crummy bachelor's degree. and I'm so mad about the shit. So yeah, Joe Biden needs to cancel that 50K. Up to 50K, need to cancel it all. And we're going to put pressure on Joe Biden's neck. Chuck Schumer gave us the challenge. He said, call Joe Biden. Joe Biden don't think that we about that action. So let's let Joe Biden know that we are all about that action. Cancel all student loan debt for everybody. So 100%. All right, y'all. That's it. 6:04. I will see y'all 8:30 tonight. Clickbaity. Thank you all for hanging out with us here on Burn It Down with Kim Brown. I will see y'all back here on Friday. So see y'all later. Bye-bye.